Chris said, did you have to weigh up the possibility of maybe resting some of your stars this week? Was it ever a consideration against Port Adelaide? Or?
Oh, not because it's Port Adelaide. No, we're, and have for a long time, over a decade, have gone through that process of thinking about where we are in the periodisation of our program. We have a short break into our next game, which is a consideration, but not a strong one, to be honest. We've got a pretty good record. We think of managing those things pretty well, and we have a list that we're pretty confident is in good shape. So if there was a glaringly obvious reason to push the button on some of that stuff, we would. It's not as if we're opposed to it, but no, it's very likely that we'll be unchanged again.
So maybe in terms of resting stars, that could happen next week with the shorter break?
It's on the table. Yeah, we're definitely thinking about it, but nothing that we can communicate at this point.
I know you don't look like looking back at the past, but you had a pretty big win over Port Adelaide earlier this year. Obviously, you take confidence from that, but do you change anything in your preparation in terms of how you guys played against them back in round 10?
Yeah, things are a little bit different, even in terms of personnel. Both teams are a little bit different. I should clarify, I do think the last time you played a team is relevant. Now, the time you played them 3 years ago is kind of less relevant, and it depends a little bit on the shifts as well. Like I think they have been quite sort of open throughout the year that they've been looking to shift a few things, which keeps you on your toes, because like going in sort of expecting what you've always got is dangerous against an opponent like that. And even the last time we played them, we were very aware of how good their best is. I can't remember exactly the context, but they might have beaten Hawthorn really convincingly in and around that period. And I don't think you need to look too far with them to see some really good footy. So that's more what we've focused on.
Chris, how do you, with no VFL this weekend, do the guys that are on the edge or just the whole remaining squad, are they doing something a little bit different in terms of their training load to keep them on their toes?
Yeah, a little bit more work. So the majority of that group will do a decent session tomorrow. It becomes a little harder, with carryovers and stuff like that. But that's a challenge that that we're used to. But all of those guys will do some extra work. It doesn't replace a game, and we don't chase those metrics anyway. But given that there's only 2 VFL games to go, in all likelihood for us, that does make that sort of planning of training a bit more relevant for us.
I know you'll touch a bit of wood here, but have you ever, from memory in your time, I don't know of the list being this healthy at this time of the year. Usually you've got one that's a season ender and one that's maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but there's potential you might have 41 or 42 blokes playing in the hoops next weekend at a different level.
Yeah, it's rare. Even the guys that have been long-termers for us this year, Cam Guthrie is going to play some footy in the VFL next week. Collar Jasney's in that group as well. So yeah, we're optimistic that we could have very close to full availability. Now, as we said, the clock's ticking a bit in terms of the VFL minutes that we have available. But it is, we're obviously try to plan it that way. But you need a lot of luck in this game as well, so we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
It's probably an obvious answer, but you're not closing the door on anybody. It's not like you go, well, we don't think they'll be part of our plans come September.
No, we've got some developing players on our list that we wouldn't be thinking of in terms of coming into our senior team, but with those obvious exceptions, no, my understanding is everyone else is on the table. That's certainly the way I'm thinking about it.
Chris, the AFL's website broadcast some audio of you having a chat with Bailey Smith the other day, talking about his groin or his hammy. Is he all good to go? Or?
Yeah, he is, yeah. If they keep doing that stuff, we won't let them in, because it was so misleading, the way that was reported. It was just not true. Now, I don't really care, but it's annoying for other people who have to answer the question.
Did you have a problem with them broadcasting the audio in what was...
Well, only for the reasons outlined, they got it wrong. So my understanding is that when they're here, they're not recording audio of me speaking. I consider that a blatant intrusion, to be honest. Now I'm making too big a deal of it because I don't really care, because I don't follow it. Like, if you didn't tell me about it, or if our media guys didn't tell me about it, I wouldn't be aware of it. And that's the way I choose to live my life. But even for the supporters, like to mislead them into thinking that Bailey's likely not playing or might be under some doubt because of a hamstring, it's just not the right thing to do. So you'll obviously say, well, why don't you just come out and clarify it? Because then we'd be clarifying 500 questions every single week. So, but for the purpose of this exercise, the conversation was around what exactly he was going to do at training, given he had a bit of a tight groin. Yep, so the extrapolation to a hamstring was wrong, and again, I should stop talking about it because it's not a big deal. I don't really care that much. But it is true to say, like, my point of view is, if that happens again, then I won't go out there until the cameras are gone. Like, you've been invited in, like, treat it with some respect.
Do you feel like there's maybe a bit of a, and it's probably rich coming from us, but an obsession with Bailey? Like, you've been here 14 years. Have you ever found one player, so many injury updates, people are obsessed with how his body's going?
No, I think I get that bit. I get, not just the injury stuff, I get the obsession with him. I'm a bit obsessed with him as well. You know, it's hard not to be. So it's not as if we're really protective of him, I don't think. Like, I would understand you guys getting a bit more annoyed if we really did shield him from the media. I mean, for my part, I want him out there. I think he's a good news story for our footy club, and supporters love him, and he's an interesting guy. But yeah, I think it sort of steps over the line when you imply that there's an issue that doesn't exist.
Just looking forward, Chris, just like on Duncan Guthrie, College Asney, will they be unencumbered? Is your plan for that VFL game next Saturday?
Pretty close to, yeah. So my read on it was that if they had played this week, there would have been some restrictions, but because they got the extra week of training under their belt, there'll be less.
It's Member Thankyou Round, 90,000 members is an incredible figure, and I know we're talking Hawk tomorrow and we'll be talking about target 100,000 next year, but from when you started, what the figure was, I know it's probably something you're not tracking, but it's just an incredible figure for a club based in regional Australia. Yeah,
I mean, you're right, I don't track it in detail, but I do have a really good sense of the evolution of the footy club. I don't think it was that long ago that I was playing against Geelong down here. Now, it was a long time ago, but the transformation in the ground, for a start, is amazing. And I think even if you were thinking really big picture with the most optimistic lens possible, if 20 years ago you'd said, it's possible for this club to have 100,000 supporters, or members, sorry, given the capacity of this ground. Now, even now, the capacity is 40 and we're looking at 100,000 members. It's extraordinary. And, you know, I guess we're all just so grateful of the people that have sort of got behind this footy club, and you know, it does help drive us to, I think we've provided pretty good value, and we're driven to improve that as much as we possibly can. But yeah, 90 it is a great number.
It'll be a developing story over the next couple of weeks. Jezza, 100 goals. How likely do you see it happening? It's probably not something you're thinking of, but do you give him a realistic chance of getting it?
No, I'd have to think about it a bit more, and I probably won't. So, seems like a long way off. So, we haven't even qualified for finals yet. You know, it's like 4 games to go. Yeah, I don't think I'd be surprised if we're going out of our way. And the balance there is, we want him to play as well as possible, and sometimes that manifests in goals, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I think he would say, hey, we've got too much to worry about in terms of getting our team right. We're not going to compromise that to get him an extra couple of goals. But those two things might not be mutually exclusive. Like him having the ball in his hands generally is a good thing for the Cats.
At the same time, if anyone could do it, do you think it's him?
It helps having this many goals at this stage of the season. Do you mean in general?
Like, yeah, just in general, like, you know, he's been one of the best keyboards over the last decade.
Yeah, and the game sort of evolved away from one guy kicking a lot of goals. But I look around the comp and I see plenty of players that are capable of it. You know, Hogan plays deep, gets plenty of chances. Ben King's a bit the same. Jeremy's a little different to those guys in that we really sort of set it up to say that, you know, he's going to be, you know, the one isolated player in our forward half, say the way the greats like Dunstall and Lockett were. But yeah, I think it's good for the game having a guy that's sort of getting a little bit closer, because it did appear there at one stage that 50 was the new 100. Maybe that shifted a bit.